So, hmm, I'm really excited about tonight's lesson.
Pardon? Say it again, sorry.
I'm excited for tonight's lesson. I'm actually planning on being an animation major.
Oh, great, great. So, this is not a high-end animation. This is just, we are going to create a very simple file, but at the same time, we are going to look into some of the basics, very basics of animation, how animation works.
It's still exciting.
Right. All right. Let me share my screen with you, and then we'll go from there.
I did an animation once with Photoshop with like frames.
Uh-huh.
So this one's also going to be working with frames?
This one will be frames, as well as we are also going to create a video animation.
Okay, cool.
So very simple ones, but it's a 100 class, so I just wanted to introduce that. This is one of the things you can do. Okay, so I built this animation quickly, but we are also going to use the raw files to build this. And we will be also learning some of the tricks we can use in Photoshop to put everything together quickly. Okay, so basically this is how this animation is running. So here's a rocket. Okay, so this is a simple rocket file sitting on its own layer, and it's going to launch. Okay, so in order to launch the rocket, it's going to have a countdown. So if I play this video, so 3, 2, 1, and then launch, and then the rocket launches. So, let's say that we were going to create a quick, cheap animation to launch a product. Okay, so in this case, a rocket is launching. We can also put maybe if it was a shampoo being launched. So once the rocket launches, so the bottle appears over here or something. Um, so let's see how we can get everything together. I have a folder over here. Okay, and in this I have some files. These are the files which I downloaded from NASA's website. Okay, so here's another interesting image of moon with a really big crater. Here's another image. Here's a bottle I was thinking. I just found this on the web. This was the image which I used last time. And image of a moon. Maybe we can find an image of Earth or something. This is just a clip art rocket. You can design something like this in Illustrator, copy and paste that in Photoshop, and so on. So these are some of the files we can work with. So putting everything together. So first of all, we need to know that how big this file is going to be. So I'm going to make this new animation. Going to go to File and create a new, and it's going to be 1000 pixels by 600 pixels file. So width is going to be 1000 pixels. Make sure it's pixels, not inches, and 600 pixels. Resolution is going to be 72. And since we are creating a web animation, make sure it's not CMYK in colors. And that's why we are going to change it to RGB, because CMYK will not animate. CMYK, a lot of web browsers may not even be able to recognize a CMYK file. This is just a process color. where these type of files are created for printing process called offset printing. Okay, so RGB. 8-bit is fine. Please don't make it 16 or 32. 8-bit is okay. 8-bit means that this file will contain 256 colors maximum. We can start with a white background, that is okay. I'll just call it rocket launch and just say okay to this. Okay, so here's my file. I'm just starting with an empty artboard. Okay, so in order to do something, obviously we need to create a background. So we will use one of those images in that rocket folder. And let's see, I think I might use the same image which I used earlier, which was this one. Okay, so I can place this image in Photoshop, or I can simply drag this image in Photoshop. Okay, so once this image is here, I can scale it. All right, so let me bring my layers panel over here so that we can see. And I'm going to minimize this. Okay, and just put it over here. All right, so if you notice my layers panel, so I have a new layer, and the name is the same name as the name of the file. So moon surface 4. Okay, so I want this moon surface. This is a black and white file, but I want to add some color to it. And I want the, if it's a planet, I want this to be, let's say, orange, or maybe magenta, or any other color. So what can I do? Can anyone help me? How can I colorize this image?
Change the values or hues?
Okay, so you can change the hues. So to change the hues, where will I go? Image, adjustment, and then from here, I'm going to choose hue saturation. Okay, so in hue saturation, if I change the hue, nothing happens. If I change the saturation, nothing happens. Lightness or darkness, we can do that. So what I'm going to do is make sure that everything is back to normal. Just put 0, 0, 0 everywhere. So there is a button over there called colorize. Okay, so that's the button I will choose. Okay, so as soon as I do this, you can see there's a little bit of a hue added. And I'm going to increase the saturation. How much saturation I need from that color, that means the purity of that color. If I go all the way to the right, so again, this is fully saturated. So whatever hue is selected over here. And if I move the hue slider, so I can choose a different hue over here. All right, so I think I wanted to make it orange. So let's go more towards the red side, and I can make it more saturated or less saturated. I can also make it a little bit darker or lighter. Okay. Now, if you notice that when I go towards light, so all the 100% pixels over there also starts getting some of that hue values in there. because now it's not completely black. This surface becomes gray. So it's up to us what we want to do, but I want to keep it black. I just want this area to be colored. So in order to colorize the image, in this case, what we are using is the colorize option in your hue saturation dialog box. And I'll just say OK to this. Okay, so what we have done is we have added an adjustment. Now, if you notice that adjustment was not just on this layer, okay, it has been added to the layer. Why it was added? Because when I dragged and dropped a file in here, this becomes as a smart object layer. Okay, so this icon on the thumbnail over here represents that this is a smart object, and we are adding a smart filter on it. So if it's a smart object, so if you are making any changes, it's going to be smart object. I mean smart filter. So smart filters are again the type of filters which can be added on top of the smart object, and we are not actually changing the pixels. We are just adding a kind of an effect on top of that. And so there's a smart filter, and we added hue saturation over here. If I want to make any changes to the hue saturation, I can come over here and double click on hue saturation over here, and then I can just readjust the image. Okay. All right, so this is looking okay for right now. I also want to create sort of a planet in the background over here. And let's see what else. There was this image over here. I think I might use this. Okay, so once again, I'm going to take this image, drag it in. So that is one way of doing that. This is going to create a smart object. Another way of doing that will be if I open this image in Photoshop, and from Photoshop, either I can do Command A and choose copy, or just grab this layer and go to the rocket layer. This was the file we were working on, and then just drop it over here. Okay. Now I can place this anywhere I want. I can Command T to scale it. Okay. Now this is looking okay. I just wanted to also show you another interesting effect which you can create. Let's think that the surface in the background was not, or the sky in the background was not black. It was some other color. Maybe it was blue. Let me just create a layer. I'm not going to use that, but just to show you. So I created a new layer, and for the foreground color, I'm going to choose this blue. And for the background, I'm going to make it a little lighter blue. Okay, so this is foreground, this is background. I can take my gradient tool and draw a gradient vertically like this. Okay, so now if you notice that layer number 2 is my gradient, and layer number 1 is where I brought this file. Now, if I want this to look like there's a moon in the sky, what should I do to this layer, layer 1? Help me. how can I make this blend with the background?
Minimize the opacity or cut it out.
Minimize opacity is going to do this. Cutting out is going to be, let's say that I make a elliptical marquee. Okay, and if I cut it out, okay, so I will be extracting pixels from here. If I delete this, it's going to delete the moon. That's what I don't want to do. If I delete the background, I can do that by going to the
Or like inverse it.
select menu and inverse. Now the background is selected. I can delete that. That's one way of doing this. Let me do Command Z. Okay. Other than doing something like this, I can also create a mask. So I can add a mask over here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a mask. But still, if you notice that this doesn't look that great, how can I get rid of the black areas over here so that it looks like, you know, the moon is sort of blending in the background? Okay, so one of the things we can do, I think I didn't show this when we were learning Photoshop earlier, that is called the blending options. So this layer, which is the moon layer right now, I'm just going to call it moon. Let's just call it moon. So on the moon layer, I'm going to double click on where the icon is, okay? As soon as I double click, it opens up this layer style dialog box. And in layer style dialog box, the first option over here under styles is called blending options. And this is where all the parameters are which we can change for the blending options. So I'm going to go straight down over here. I'm not going to worry about all this stuff. I'll go to the blend if section. So in blend if, I'm going to start with gray. And in this case, I'll just be working with grays. So that is fine. But if you notice that if I take the slider, which is the light slider over here, this is the dark slider, this is the light slider, which says this layer. Which layer is selected right now? The moon layer is selected. So if I take this slider and start moving it towards left, see what is happening. So the white is disappearing. So white sort of blends in the background. Okay, so let me just bring this back. If I take the darker slider and move it this way, I can get rid of the darker areas over here. But the problem is, if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that this transition is not that smooth. And yes, you know, the black pixels are being removed, and now the darker gray pixels are being removed. Okay, but it is not giving me a nice smooth transition. So in order to do this, I'm going to stop somewhere over here. And if you notice, the slider has a line in it. Okay, it's not a solid slider. So if I press my Option key down and click on one side and start dragging, it's going to split this slider. Okay, and then I can pull this slider back to bring some of the darks back. And maybe I can just bring this slider more inward. So I'll just trying to find a happy area between. Okay, so this is one way. Okay, so now it is still not working very well. So let's try another thing. How about going to the underlying layer? Which is the underlying layer? This gradient layer. Let's see what this does. Okay, if I move this slider at one point, just image will disappear. If I bring this slider over here, so this is not going to work. So we need to come up with some sort of a happy medium over here. But in my case, since my background is black, okay, so in that case, so probably I can get away with this. Okay, and if I turn off this layer, you can see that it works pretty good. Okay, so we were able to remove that that rectangle around the image. I can just make it a little more smaller. Okay, that is fine. If you want to colorize the moon itself, you can do that. So if I do Command U, which is a shortcut for hue saturation, okay. Let's see why it's not working. Image adjustment. Okay, for some reason my keyboard shortcuts were not working. So anyway, so here's the hue saturation slider again. This time we are going to colorize and going to make it blue, but a little lighter blue. Okay. On top of that, you can still use those blending. Okay, so how one layer can blend with layers below it. So I can't use darken multiply because when you multiply this, it's going to multiply with black and leave nothing. But maybe you can use screen option over here. We will see that after completing this animation, I'm also going to show you a little bit of this screen effect on a darker background. Okay, so but for right now, I think it is looking good. Okay, so let's bring that rocket ship over there. So I'm going to use this clip art file. Okay, it was a PNG file, so that's why it didn't have any background, so I don't have to go and clean that up. Just make this a little bit smaller. All right, so when I hit enter, so here is a smart object. Now in this case, I want to animate the rocket and the flame separately. And it is a smart object, so it is sort of an encapsulated object on this layer. If I double click on smart object, it opens its own document. Okay, so that is the smart object. But in order to separate these, I'll have to right click on the layer and choose rasterize layer. Okay, so when we rasterize, so this is no longer a smart object, but these are just pixels. Okay, so in these pixel layer, if I want to separate the flame, so I can just, in this case, it's an easy selection. I can just select this part of the rocket. Okay, and I can copy and paste it on the new layer. Okay, so but there is an easier way and there's a shortcut to do that. So if I do Command J, okay, so what it does is that it puts the flame on its own layer, but at the same time what Command J does is, if you notice that it just made a copy of that flame on the new layer. Okay, we don't want to do this. We want to get rid of the flame on this layer and put it on the next layer. Okay, so that means we have to separate. Now I can come back to this rocket layer and delete this part. That can be done, but there's also a keyboard shortcut to do that. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to make a selection. Okay, so this is the rocket layer. So instead of doing Command J, if I do Command Shift and then J, so Command Shift J is a shortcut. Okay, so I can not just copy this on a new layer, but it's going to cut it from the layer below it. Okay. All right. So just a second, guys. All right. Thank you. All right. But we are able to separate these, but in order to keep them together, I'm going to shift select both these layers, and then I'm going to group them and double click and call it, okay, let's just call it rocket 1. All right. So now everything is together, but at the same time separate as separate layers. Okay. So this is good. Another thing I want is, this is what I was thinking. There was another image of that bottle I brought. Okay, so let's just open that as a separate image. Okay, I could have just dragged it in here, but I just wanted to see if I haven't used this tool on this one yet, which is the new object selection tool. And I know there are certain areas which are not very well defined. So let's see how this tool behaves. Okay, so it did a pretty good job. There is a little bit of area which was not, which didn't get selected because these pixels were completely white. Okay, so I can add these pixels back in my selection. So how I can add is, this time I'm going to use my pen tool. Remember, we have used pen tool. And with the pen tool, I'm just going to create a path like this. Okay. I think I'm going a little too far over here. Okay. So now we have this selection. Okay. Here's a path. Okay. So we already have a selection going. So if I press Command Shift and then click on the path itself, you can see I get a little plus sign in there. So Command to load this path as a selection, and Shift to add to the existing selection. Okay, so that's what I did. Okay, so this is fine. So far I'm happy with my selection. I can either copy and paste or drag and drop. So I'll just Command X to cut it from here. You see the difference between copy and cut. Copy is Command C. Copy is going to leave the pixels there, and it's just going to copy the pixels. Cut is going to cut the pixels out of your selection. And I'll go back to my, actually I've got too many files open at the same time now. And I can just paste it in here, Command T. I could make a little better selection of this, but for this quick animation, it should be okay. So I'll just put the bottle over here, but it needs to go behind the rocket, that when the rocket flies, so there's a bottle left on the ground. Okay. And one last thing, I need to add some numbers and the countdown number. So I'm going to say 3 space 2 1 launch. Okay, so here's a text layer. I could have created separate layers, but in this case, we'll do the same. First of all, we are going to right click on the layer and rasterize type. Okay, so now it is no longer editable text. It is just a layer full of pixels. So now I need to separate them. So I'll just select this part, just zoom in over here and turn the background off so that you can see what is going on. So I'm just going to select this part. So Command Shift J, and so I'll leave 2 alone this time and 1 in launch. Command Shift J, and then lastly Command Shift and then J. So now you can see that Photoshop was creating these new layers for me. Okay, if you want to name them, so I'll just call this layer 3, 2, 1, and let's call this launch. All right. So the countdown will start with 3. Okay, so let's just turn this on. Okay, so basically, I have just prepared my file and I was making it ready to animate. Okay, so at this point, guys, so I'm going to take a 5-minute break. I was fasting today, so it's time to break the fast. So I'll just take 5 minutes and then come back again. Okay. All right, guys, I'm back. Is everyone with me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's a month of fasting for us, so we fast from before the sunrise to after the sun sets. So today it was close to like 14 hours, but that is fine. All right, so back to our file. So we are all, almost ready to animate this. Okay, so we prepared everything. We have the rocket over here sitting in its own folder. We have flame. Okay, now I was thinking I can also do something to the flame itself. Let's just call this layer flame. And I'm going to make a copy of this flame. Let me just zoom in and show you what's going on. And Command J to make a copy. And the copy itself, I'm going to Command T on it and squish it a little bit this way. Something like this. Okay, so now we got two layers. One, which is a copy, squished copy, and the other full flame. So I can alternate between these two layers just to give the impression that it's a live flame on the rocket itself. Okay, so maybe this will be a good place to start the rocket. All right. So now if you notice that all the components of my animation are in layers and they are all separate layers. This layer I don't need, so I can just delete that. Okay. So next we are going to animate. So where do we animate in Photoshop is there's another window, okay, which is called timeline window. So it's right down here. And then if we go to the window menu, okay, and if it's not there, so you can choose timeline and this timeline opens up, okay. So in timeline, panel, when you first open, it will open up like a blank window over here, but there is a button. So which is asking me what type of animation I want to create. So there are two different types of animations which you can do in Photoshop. One is to create a video animation or the other frame by frame animation. So for this file, I'm going to do frame animation. Okay, so once I choose this, I still need to click on this button to turn the frame animation on. So now if you notice that in my timeline, there is frame 1 of my animation. So this is where my animation starts. Okay. So if I want to add another frame in there, so there is just like new layer icon in the layers panel, there is another icon over here in timelines to create a new frame. So what it does is it duplicates the current frame which was selected, okay? And on this new frame, I want to start my countdown, okay? So if I go and open my layers panel, I think I closed it accidentally. So go back to, actually it is there, it's just hiding somewhere. Okay, yeah. It was hiding down there, so. Okay, so in this frame number 2, I'm going to turn on 3. Okay, and the countdown is usually 1 second. okay, like 10, 9, 8, 7. So I'm going to change the timing in my timeline. You see where the frame is right here. It says 0 seconds. I'm going to click over here and change this to 1 second. And then I'm going to copy another frame. So duplicate that frame, turn on the number 2, and make another copy and turn on number 1, and another copy and the word launch. So far, this is what we have created. If I rewind and play, there's a play button in here. 1001, 1002, 1003, and launch. Okay, oh, sorry, it's going really, it's 1 second. So instead of 1 minute, I mean, no, it should be 1 second. It looks like it's going a little too fast on my machine. Let's try it again. Let's make this about 5 seconds, and then the countdown will start. One 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Okay, no, this is fine. So see what is happening over here is that on each frame, the number changes. The timing is being controlled by each frame. So that is the difference between other type of animations and frame by frame animation, where you can actually control the timing with frames itself. Okay, so next thing I want to do is, so when it launches in frame number 5, okay, we'll just make another copy of this. Command, okay, so I'm not going to use keyboard shortcut, so add another frame. And in this frame, I'm going to change the time, I mean, not the timing, change the picture to a larger flame. Okay. So in other words, if I go back to frame 5, so we got a smaller frame, and then frame 6, we have a larger frame. And once the flame becomes large, I want the rocket to launch. Okay. So I'm going to add another frame. Okay. And in frame number 7, I'll go to my rocket layer itself. Okay, so this is the whole rocket folder. I'm going to take my move tool and move the rocket up. I'll just take it all the way, like it's going to leave my document window. So frame 5, the rocket is here, then it launches and it goes up there. But if you notice that I did the timing change down there, 1 second, if I do this, it's going to take forever to launch. So I'm going to change the timing on frame number 6 to, let's say, 0.2 seconds, and change this to 0.2 seconds. Okay. So now going from frame 6 to frame 7, again, there's a big jump. But I want this to go smoothly. So for that, you can add something called tweening. So tweening is which animators use. You know, for example, if there's a Disney animation and Mickey Mouse is going to throw something, and Mickey Mouse raises his hands, and then he rotates his arm, and then releases whatever he's going to throw. Okay, so usually what happens is that There are senior animators, there are junior animators. So senior animators will come and draw keyframes. So one frame will be when he has his arm raised. Second will be after the rotation ends. So these two frames will be given to junior animators to draw the in-between frames for them. So this process is called in-betweening, or just in short, tweening. So in Photoshop, we will play the role of senior animators, and right down here, there's a button. If I roll over, and it says Tweens Animation Frames. So this is the button I'm going to click. So this is where I can add frames. So first of all, if you notice, I selected frame number 6, which is the previous frame from the last frame. And from here, I can choose tween with. I will choose next frame. Then I can decide how many frames I want in between. So if I use less frames, the animation will be faster, but it will be jagged. So I'm just going to say, how about adding 10 frames in between these two frames? Okay. Then we need to decide what is changing over here. There's a position change, there's an opacity change, and there is effects change. So these are the 3 changes which your frame animation supports. So I know that there is no opacity being changed, there's no effects being added. So if I just choose position, I should be fine. If you're not sure, just leave it. Okay, it won't make a difference in this case. And we'll just say okay. So now when I did this, if you notice that Photoshop has added more frames in there. So these are 10 frames between frame number 6 and the last frame. So let's just rewind and play this video and see our animation. So after 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1, launch, and the rocket launches. Okay. So we did the basic animation over here. So a couple of things we learned, that the animation is done in frames. You can control the timing of each frame. And excuse me, my throat is getting dry. And if you notice that we added more frames by using the process called tweening. Okay, this is fine. Now, the tweening, when tweening works, is it is between the 2 frames which we select. But right now, I'm just going to stop the animation. I remember that frame 6 is where the launching started. So I'm going to go like leave at least 1 or 2 frames in between. So let's say I'll go to frame number 9. And over here, I'm going to switch the flames. Then leave 2 more frames over here, and then switch the flame. And 2 more flames. Okay. So now let's see if I can, I'll just change this from 5 seconds to, let's just wait for about 2 seconds to start. And make sure it's rewinded and play. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so it is just giving a little bit of a feel of that the flame is burning. Now, if you want to make it look a little more real, so again, we can add more frames in there. We can add more versions of flame in there, and so on. Okay, so this is basic animation with a GIF animation, but the question is, how do I save it now? Okay, so first of all, I'm going to stop this animation, rewind, and go to File, and first of all, save your Photoshop file with all the layers and everything. So you can save, and I'll just save it to my desktop. And I'm going to call it Rocket Launch. Let's call it 2. Save it to the desktop. Now this is your work file. Okay, so maybe later on you need to come and make any adjustments or add or subtract anything from here. So this is the file you are going to choose. Now for putting a GIF animation on the web or on the web page, so you need to save it in a GIF format. Okay, so if I go to File and choose Save As, and in Save As dialog box, okay, you're not supposed to do this. I'm just showing you because there's a different way. The reason why I did a Save As at this point is that you can choose GIF over here, but this GIF will not save your animation. Okay, so there is another version of GIF which is called CompuServe GIF. There was a company called CompuServe. Okay, so they have a proprietary rights over this format. Okay, so yes, in Photoshop you can use a method of saving it, but if you just go to File and Save As GIF, it's not going to work. It will just save a static GIF file. But if you want the animation, so you'll have to go to File and Export. Okay, and from Export, you have to go to Save for Web. Once again, File, Export, Save for Web. And this has become like a legacy way of saving files. Probably at one point it will go away and they will have to find another way of saving GIF files. Okay, but still it is there. So Save for Web Legacy. And so this dialog box will open up. We just have to make sure that we have format of GIF selected. If I choose JPEG, PNG, PNG24, or PA or web or WBMP files, they do not animate. Only GIF will animate. Okay, and this should be fine. So I can just save this. Okay, before I do this, so I just also want you to look at a couple of things over here. This is the color palette which GIF file has given to this file. GIF animations can only support 256 colors. Okay, right now we are using half the number of colors. And if we look at the optimized view of my file over here, it looks pretty decent. So another thing to keep in mind is right here, this GIF file is 251 kilobits in size. Okay, if somebody was using a really old dial-up connection that is 56.6 kilobits per second, it will take 46 seconds for it to load. Long time. Okay, but if somebody is using let's say cable, 1.5 megabits per second, okay, it only going to take 3 seconds for it to load on the internet. If somebody is using even a faster connection, it will only take 2 seconds to load. Okay, so which is pretty decent over here. If I want to optimize it a little more, I can reduce or increase the number of colors. but it's looking fine. I can even go lower than that. So let's try 32 colors. Now 32 colors, you see I've already lost that nice red color in here. Okay, so probably 32 is a little too low. How about 64 colors? Okay, so maybe I can live with 64 colors. Okay, and if somebody was using 56.6 modem, so it will load in about 37 seconds. But nowadays nobody uses that, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to save. Okay, and I'm going to save it to the desktop. And this is where I have some options. Do I just want to save image only, which is your GIF animation, or you also want to create a HTML file with that? So in this case, I'm just going to say, hey, you just save me an image only file, and click on save. Okay, and if you notice on my desktop, there is a new animation file, which is a GIF animation. If I'm using my Mac computers, I can just press my space bar to open it, and I can see that it runs. Okay. If you are not on a Mac computer, if you want to test your GIF file, you can open any browser. So maybe I can open Chrome, okay, and then just take this file and drag it in there to just test it out. Okay, so this is a simple animation. You can create animation banners like this. These are usually continuous loops of animation. You can stop GIF files to be in continuous loop by, if I go back to Photoshop, okay, and before saving it as a GIF, if you notice right down here, it says forever. So I do have the option of just playing the animation once, 3 times, or I can just specify a number how many times. So I can just say that please only run 10 times and then stop. Okay. Now, why do we have to do this is because GIF animations keep the servers busy. So each time it runs, it loads it from the server. So some companies don't like that. So they will put a restriction for you. For example, Google and Yahoo, these sites, if you create a banner and you want to advertise it over there, they'll say, hey, if you are using a GIF file, make sure that it only uh, loops 10 times or 12 times. So they'll give you a number. So if you give them a file which is running forever, they're going to send it back to you. Okay, so this is you can try this exercise if you want to use the same files. I've put that in my Google Drive for you under assets called, I think the file name is called Rocket. And if you want to create something of your own, that is fine. I do want you to create at least one animation in this class. It can be as simple as this. Okay. Let me also give you a quick, you don't have to do this, but let's say if I create a new file over here, let's make it about 400 pixels by 400 pixels. And okay, let me just see if I can find something over here. Okay. Okay, so I just found this nice image. Command V to paste. Command T. I think it's English or Canadian. Anyway, I'll just scale it down. Okay, so although the back side of the coin will be different, but I just wanted to show you a quick way of showing that the image is rotating. Okay, but it's going to rotate it to the same front. Okay, so how can we do this? It's going to be very simple. Command J to make a copy. Command T, press the Option key to scale it, and Shift key to scale it proportionally like this. Okay, and then Command J again, Command T. So Option Shift and Command J, Command T. I'll just do one more. Okay, so this is what is happening over here. Okay, it starts over here, and it'll start becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, and then we want to make it loop. Okay, and I'll show you how to make that loop. Because at this time, if your animation jumps from the smallest of the frames to the largest, there will be a big jump. So before we do this, so let's just create the animation itself. Okay. So once again, under a timeline, we are going to create a frame animation. Click to create those frames. Okay. And frame 1 will start like this. New frame. So we need to create 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So I already have 1, 2, 3, and 4 version. So I'll just go to frame number 2 and say that instead of this layer, show me this one. This layer, show me this one. This layer, show me this one. This one, show me the last one. I don't need the, okay, so now we are fine. Okay, so if I rewind and play, okay, it looks fine, but it's not smooth. So in order to make it smooth, I'm going to stop the animation over here. So what I'll do is I'm going to select frame number 2 and then shift select frame number 4. So these are the in-betweens, okay? So I'm going to press the Option key and drag. Okay, so I made a copy from frame 2, 3, and 4. The copies became like 6, 7, and 8. So while they are still selected, in the timeline panel, I'm going to go over here and choose reverse frames. Okay, so when I reverse those frames over here, so now if I rewind and play, so you can see that the animation is playing much smoother. Okay, so that's how you can create another loop. So the whole idea is that you have these layers. Okay, each layer can act as a frame, and once you have those frames can also be duplicated. You can change the sequence, you can reverse the sequence, or and if you want to also control the timing, for example, that once it completely rotates, you want the animation to stop for, let's say, 2 seconds and then play again. So it's going to stop and then play again. Okay. So there's a lot of fun things you can do with this. Any questions or any comments or? Is everyone with me or I've lost everyone?
I'm here.
All right. Okay. Okay, so so this was GIF animation. Okay, this is a very simple one. Another thing we can do is I already have this file. I'll just do a very simple one just to show you. Here's a Star Trek logo. Okay, and I created a nice glare or a flare effect in the background. So this is simple over here. This is just a Star Trek logo, and the layer behind it is just a static layer. Okay. So in just in order to create an effect, so I'll keep the logo static, but I want this flare to move in the background. Okay. So if I turn off the background layer completely, so you can see that there is a little bit of transparency going on with this. Okay. I could have also created something with a black background. That should be fine, but there is a transparent. The reason why I did transparency is that if I don't want to do black, for example, if I create another layer and let's say that it's going to be blue, so you can still see a little bit of that blue coming out. I don't know if you can see it on your screens very well, because it's not fully transparent, but I can still see some blues. Maybe let's try yellow and see if, yeah. So now you can see a little bit of yellow over here. Okay, but for this project, black is fine. Okay, so I want this flare to move in the background. Now this time, I'm not going to create frame animation. I'm going to create a video timeline. So once you select that, click on it again. So this is a video timeline. And some of the students will be familiar with this kind of a timeline if you have used like iMovie or any type of animation software. So this is a little more friendly. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you can look at the layers. So we got layer 1, layer 0, layer 1. Okay, layer 2, 0, layer 1. So layer 2, 0, layer 1. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, but before I show you what to do, let's just look at the interface over here. You see this pointer over here? This is called the playback head. Okay. By default, on my computer, this animation is going to take about 5 seconds to complete. Okay. I can increase the timing, decrease the timing if I want. I'll just work with 5 seconds, it's okay. And the timeline is that starting from time 0, and I can drag it all the way to time 5. Okay. So you can stop this playback head anywhere and to make changes in that particular frame in the time. Another thing, if you notice, is okay, I'm not going to go in too much detail over here. just going to confuse you. Right now, let's just make the animation. So layer 0 is where the flare is, okay? And in where it says layer 0, you see this little angle or like a greater to lesser to sign? If I click over here, it's going to open another panel. Okay, so layer 0 can be animated in these 3 different ways: position, opacity, and style. Okay, so what I want to do is, just to start with, I'm going to make sure that layer 0 is selected, and I'll just move this guy over here. Okay, and I can lock this position on this frame by clicking on this little icon, which looks like a little like a stopwatch over here. So if I click over here, so as soon as I do this, you see there's a diamond which appears, like a yellow colored diamond shape appears in my timeline. So this is your keyframe. Okay, from between this keyframe and when the animation ends, so I'm going to drag my playback head all the way to the end. I'm going to add another keyframe over here. And how you add that is that in the same layer position, you click on the diamond over here, the center, to add a diamond here. Okay, so now we have designated that we are going to make a change over here, but what change will be? I'm going to take my move tool and move this guy all the way over here. Okay. So in this case, we don't have to create in-betweening because Photoshop has already done that for me. Okay. So if I scrub the playback head like that, okay, I think I have too many things open on my computer. Okay, so while it's still thinking, here we go. Okay, so we can test this out, rewind and play. So this is how the animation is playing. Okay. You can have multiple layers. Remember, in Photoshop, you can have thousands of layers. If you have 1,000 different things be animating, you can. Okay. In this case, we only animated one layer. So let's say that this is what we needed to do, but we want to save it as a video file. How can we do this? So to save it as a video, you go to File, and once again, not save or save as, but export. From export, you're going to choose render video. Okay, so now it's going to start rendering, and it first of all, it wants to know where should I save your files. So at this time, you can see that it's going to be saving on my desktop. Okay. I don't need any subfolder, so I can just save it on the desktop. Adobe Media Encoder. Okay, so this is where the compression is added to your video files. Okay, and nowadays, if you don't know which compression to use, okay, there are several of them, but H.264 you can never go wrong with, because it is supported by all the mobile devices, all the web browsers, and everywhere. So H.264 format, and then you can choose quality. I'm just going to keep it high quality over here. Document size, okay. this document was a little bit larger, so I'm just going to, yeah, I'll just keep it with the size where it is. Okay, and then frame rate. Now for web videos or for online videos, 30 frames per second is like a standard. Okay, some videos, high quality videos can be, the frame rate can be much higher than this, but 30 frames per second is fine. Okay, and one thing to keep in mind is make sure that all frames is selected, and thus just click on render. Okay, so rendering of video files can take really long, but this was a very short file. Okay, so this is my MP4 file which it has saved. If I press my space bar on my Mac keyboard, I can open it up and I can see how this animation plays. Okay, so I can rewind and play it again. So these are two different ways you can create animations and save them. One is frame by frame animation, and the other is video timeline. Okay, so you can make your animations as complex as you want, but just to keep this in mind, Photoshop is not an animation tool. Yes, there is an ability to do animations in there. Okay, so if you don't have any other tool available, you can create some really simple, interesting animations here. And but again, if you want to create something really, really high-end, professional quality, then you'll have to use a professional animation software. Maybe programs like Adobe Animate. There's another software, Toon Boom Studio. Even Hollywood uses Toon Boom Studio, just like Simpsons and Rugrats and cartoons like that were done in Toon Boom. So okay, I'm going to stop here, guys.
For these two animations, do we have to follow your like same moon and?
No, you don't have to. If you want to do something on your own, you can do it. I will put these files on Google Drive just in case if anyone wants to go in and look at those. But you are not restricted to these files. You can just create anything you want.
We have full creative freedom on this one, right?
Yeah, full creative freedom.
And do we have to do one for the frame animation as well as video?
Even for this class, if you just do one, that should be fine. Either one is fine. If you do two, you get extra credit. It was more of an introduction that what can be done.
Does this have like other kind of, like in Flash, we have tweens where you can do like motion tween and transformation tween?
Right. No, we can't do that in Photoshop.
Oh.
So for that, you will use Flash. Oh, by the way, they changed the name of Flash. It's called Animate now.
Yeah, I haven't taken that class in like a really long time, so.
Right. So Flash animation, Flash was known for .swf files, which is a shockwave format. But shockwave format has become like a legacy. Not every hardware which is out there supports Flash anymore. So for example, iPhones and all the iDevices. So Apple has stopped supporting Flash, because now animations are done in HTML5 and other methods. But GIF animations are still fun. They are very simple, and the good thing about GIF animation is that you don't need any special software to play them. Any web browser, even if you go 20 years back, like programs like browsers like Netflix, for example, those old AOL browsers, even those used to support GIF, and so GIF files are very versatile and simple and cheap. Okay, so on Thursday, I think I might show you another example of use of GIF files. But again, you don't have to do those assignments. It will just be for your information. But your assignment for this week is just to create one simple animation and save it in a correct format. Okay, which you can turn it either a GIF file or an MP4 file. Okay, and just have fun. You're not restricted to these files. Just use your own imagination. Okay, guys, so if you have any questions, so this will be a time to ask because I will be ending the lecture very soon.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the lecture.
Thank you. Was it helpful?
Yes.
Okay, so once again, these the video of this lecture is also going to be up soon, so it will also be a good reference for you. All right, guys. So if we don't have any more questions, so thank you so much, and I'll see you guys on Thursday.